Welcome to No Question About That. This is a midweek pod. We're going to be talking about Liverpool and some other stuff today with Wayne Barton. How's it going, Wayne?
Not bad, thank you. Let's try and prolong all the other stuff as much as we can before we get to Liverpool. But I'll tell you my day today. We went to a pumpkin patch in Altrincham.
Oh, very nice.
Took the baby there and went out for lunch on the way back. I've lived in Manchester for like over a decade, so I rarely venture out. I don't go out very often, and especially since having the baby, even less. But went out for lunch. Obviously, it was on the way back. I thought I'd stop off and have something to eat. And one of my favourite things about living in Manchester is just like the weird, serendipitous meetings that I have with different people. And stopped in for a carvery somewhere. And in the corner, basically the pub was deserted apart from in the corner. And as we were leaving, we heard this voice like, Wayne, Wayne, Wayne. And it turned out to be Alan Keegan. Everyone will know, voice of Old Trafford. And he's been very kind. Like at the events that he does, if I'm there, he'll always give a shout out. But Alan Keegan was there, and Sean Kelly, maybe lesser known, but he's a well-known name in the United historian community. I would guess he does a lot for supporters locally. He's well known in the local supporter base. It's just strange. It's nice to go out and bump into people like that, because I do get it. You get it. You get it as well. Everyone gets it if you got more than 10 followers on Twitter. It's like you don't live in Manchester or you've never been to Manchester. And I've had it just a couple of weeks ago when it was the derby. I had a lot of City fans going, "Oh, you don't even live in Manchester." We don't really respond to it, really, but it's nice. I'm not really doesn't really matter to me where people are from or where because I'm not from Manchester or where they live. It doesn't really matter to me because we all support the same club. But one of the benefits, apart from being able to go to the matches, is little things like that, just bumping into him because they're really nice guys. And yeah, that was my day before. Nice. I've done a couple of minutes there rambling. That's eaten up a couple of minutes of Liverpool time.
Trying to avoid talking about the trip to Anfield on Sunday. All right, well, we'll get on to that. There's a few news items, though. So there's a lot of speculation about potential takeovers, ownership changes, the share prices. Well, I was going to say spiking, not exactly, but I can talk a little bit about what's going on there. Women's team are playing the Champions League tonight. That will have happened by the time this one goes out. There's an international break and some knock-on effects for the squad that's going to Liverpool or who might be able to start the game. All right, so continued speculation about ownerships. This was kicked off by Turkey Al-Sheikh.
Yeah.
Like last week, who tweeted out that it was imminent ownership change or the final stages of doing a deal, which honestly, my initial reaction as soon as I saw that was, this is total bullshit. This is just trolling. I was trying to work out why he was trolling, although it wouldn't exactly be the first time from Turkey Al-Sheikh, who's got 7 million followers on Twitter, to do a bit of a wind-up. But the reason why I thought it was bullshit is that you just don't get to the final stages of a negotiation without telling the market something. United are a public company. That just wasn't true. I said it. Loads of people pushed back on me, including using a whole bunch of 4-letter words, but they were wrong and I was right. I was right, and I know exactly why I was right, and they proved themselves to not know what they were talking about. So anyway, apart from that minor little rant, how have you taken the continued speculation about potential ownership changes?
Yeah, it's funny because we were talking about this in reaction to the tweet last week, and it was pretty much breaking, wasn't it? So we weren't quite sure. So we took it on face value. And like we were talking about, I did have my concerns over it. I didn't think it seemed particularly legitimate. I thought we'd wait and see for more credible information. Thing that I noticed, first of all, was that the Mail reported it as a news item in response to the tweet. So they were reacting to that. The reason why I find that interesting is because regardless of everyone else, regardless of whatever we think about the speculation that happened beforehand, Mike Keegan was pretty much the only person who had an actual line to whoever Sheikh Jassim was, whoever that that representative group putting the bid forward was. Mike Keegan was pretty much the only British journalist who had a properly credible line when it came to their releases. He didn't report that first story. The Mail got something out pretty quickly because they said something like, we're the first to report the tweet, which is just nonsense. And then Keegan...
And it was like a junior no-name.
Yeah. No, I think it was a...
was it Keegan first?
No. Keegan was the... So Keegan followed it up. Right. The first one, I think it might have been a junior one, but I've got a feeling it might have been Chris Wheeler. It might not have been.
Chris Wheeler did the follow-up story that it was actually a UAE consortium.
Okay, so it might have
and
been...
he's a bit more serious.
Yeah.
Like, compared to some of the nonsense they put out in the Mail.
No, yeah, that's true. But I still... It may well have been him reacting to... They might have modified the original story, but it was very much like, we're the first to report the tweet. Well, the tweet's the tweet. You don't report the tweet. And the second thing was that Keegan followed it up with, it was more of a rehashing of the thing that he posted. Again, this is another thing why I'm dubious about this, is that the drag-alongs were a story by the moment they were by that clause being activated in August, but nobody picked up on that. Even though we've talked about it on the pod before, we knew it was open knowledge that was going to happen. And I think at some point in early September, someone had that flagged on the desk and said, we should do something about this because the drag-alongs that got activated a few weeks ago. So it wasn't really a story, but it became a story. And then Keegan wrote something about it, and he was basically got a line from the Qataris saying that they're not interested. Their interests have moved on. Now, that was news because he had the line to them. And he was he may well have even been just a reposting of that article without any further information, just said, well, this is the understanding that I've got. Now, what is curious to me, I don't discount the credibility of the journalists who've come out. So Ben Jacobs had a great year in terms of and every couple of years you have a journalist who appears to get a lot of information right. They come from nowhere, and Ben has been around a little while, but he had a really super credible year. So everyone was like in TalkSport with Alex Crook. Normally you wouldn't credit them with being newsbreakers, but they were really good for the last 12 to 18 months, let's say. So let's give them credit where it's due. But what they've done, a lot of people have been doing on the back of this, is a lot of guesswork. Now, this is all off the back of a tweet, like you said. So it's not credible reporting as a reaction to the drag-along rights. It's not a really credible source in terms of an actual formation of a bid being put together anywhere. It's on the back of a tweet, and people have done some digging. And the best that they've got is that there's a group in the Far East who are looking at potentially putting monies together in case of a situation, which is
but none of this is real until it's real, right? As we know, with Sheikh Jassim never once showed proof of funds, just not once ever.
Exactly.
Right, and it's just the most basic stuff. You want to buy something, whether it's a football club or a bar of chocolate, you've got to have the money to do it, and he was not able to show that he had the money, right? I think the way some of this is reported, the way it frustrates me, I think, is it's just not fucking serious. Like, most of the time, it's sports reporters writing about stuff they have no idea about, and they get it all wrong. Like, so often. Yeah. Now, there's one thing is news. So Ben Jacobs today was reporting that it's IHC, who are a large group in the UAE, government-aligned. I think they're Dubai-based rather than Abu Dhabi, may be the leading partner in that consortium that's thinking about it. But there's no bid on the table. There's no process for purchasing. There's no reverse takeover being attempted by some other corporation. There's no, you can go check Edgar today, SEC filings, nothing on there. There's nothing material, right? Which is the materiality test. Does it affect the share price? Right, through information, not sentiment. And me as a person with standing, I own some United shares, not many, but, a few, could sue the club if they didn't report this and someone else had information first, right? So, everything else is just so much total bullshit unless you get to the point of, this is material and it's real. It's not like the Glazers have announced another strategic review or they're looking for investment partners. And I think a lot of this comes because United is shopping the stadium project around at the moment, right? On the one side, there's negotiations with Freightliner over trying to own that land, and there's a bit of, game of chicken happening there with the price. And on the second side, they are going around to private equity probably state actors as well, and looking for funding for £2 billion to build that stadium. And that is really difficult when you have £800 million plus of debt. Just really difficult. And so I think that a lot of this equity conversation, ownership, is getting mixed up with the stadium and debt conversation. They're not the same. They might be the same thing, because you can obviously swap equity for cash. The Glazers have been very reluctant over the years to sell their shares to put it back into the company, So I think that's probably not realistic either. But I think some of these are getting mixed up, and that's why we're getting some of this reporting, which probably isn't accurate, And as much as people have reported interesting stuff and had a line from the different parties through the last 2 years of this takeover stuff, almost all of it was wrong. Now, they may have got information out of the parties, but it didn't turn out to be true, right? The only people that ever had anything that was actually true was the FT, the Times, who's Ratcliffe's favourite outlet, and Bloomberg. Like, the rest of it was just nonsense. And so I just want to put it in that context, because there's a lot of fevered speculation on social media, which just probably isn't right. But it is leading to some changes, right? So a lot of people watch the market. You can watch United share price tick up to about $18 something as we speak. That's a sort of 15, 20% rise over the last few days. Now, given everything I just said, I think that is sentiment, not information. Like, this is the market going, hey, well, we see that ROFO clause that Ratcliffe has, and we see the floor price of $33 a share. We know that Glazers have the drag-along rights, as in they can make everyone else sell if they decide to sell in its entirety. And so, maybe something could happen. And if something did happen, it's going to be a minimum of 33 a share. And we're at 14 a couple of days ago. We're now at 18. That represents a 2x return in a very short period of time, right? So you can see why there's some speculation. But go check the volumes. Right, we are talking about a few £1 million. That is it, right? Less than 1% of United's total shareholding was traded yesterday. I looked at the volumes, right? That we went up 8% on the back of a 14% rise the day before. Less than £1 million worth of trading. It's almost nothing. Yeah, it's almost nothing. So just put it in that context. It's business. Something can happen. There may be soft negotiations behind the scenes, but when it gets serious, we'll get an announcement, because as I said, everyone has to have that. Otherwise, I'm going to have a lot of fun taking the Glazers to court. Anyway, it's destabilising as well, I think, a little bit, because, we're 18 months into the Ratcliffe project, whatever you think about the mistakes they've made, which are a lot, in my opinion. To have another ownership change and rip out all the leadership changes, which would almost certainly happen, and install a whole bunch of new people, I don't think would be particularly good for the football club right now. We need a period of stability, in my best opinion. And again, things can change very fast. I wrote on my Substack, if you want to go and have 2,500 words of opinion, but the TLDR was basically, I think, look at that February 27 moment when the ROFO runs out. Yeah. And it becomes kind of open market at that point. That seems like the most sensible large-scale ownership change. There could be incremental stuff in between now. Ratcliffe may decide to buy a few more shares if he wants. He has a problem because Ineos are not in a great position, not in a terrible position long term, but not great right now. Market stuff mainly. And he's promised to not take out more dividends, which kind of gives him less flexibility on cash. He's asset rich, cash poor in that scenario. Yeah. So bit of time makes a lot of sense from a story point of view.
Yeah, maybe the other thing is, like you were saying about soft things, I think soft stories as well coming out. So the ones that I would pay attention to are the ones about the Freightliner land and also the stadium redevelopment plans, like taking the canopy off and stuff like that. So I think those are the without wanting to commit to big exclusives, those are the things that Ratcliffe and the camp can put out that are minor deflections. I've been saying since the Europa League final that in the wake of the defeat, the best thing that could happen is some proper clarity on the takeover procedure. How because that's the only thing that can really save the club right long term. That's the only thing that can provide ultimate stability. All right, management can always get decisions wrong. We could be stuck in perpetuity for managers getting things wrong for the rest of the time. It doesn't really matter. Well, it matters obviously, but what I'm saying is, like, if you've got the ownership in place and you've eliminated the debt as much as you can, then the rest of it is, decisions are made, and
that debt cannot be eliminated. Nothing can be done on the debt until we have clarity about majority ownership.
So
this can't, because even if Ratcliffe was minded to do it, pay down debt, like how? Right? He's not going to do it out of the goodness of his own heart. The Glazers are not going to give him equity for it because they want that money themselves for the asset that they own, rightly or wrongly, morally. Legally, rightly, morally, But so it's just not going to happen until we have clarity about that ownership control, and we know if the Glazers remain majority owners, which they are, about 70% of the voting rights, that debt is never going to get paid down.
I'm with you on that. I'm saying the only thing that can stabilise the club is the removal of that. So we needed what we really needed. We don't need to talk about stadiums. We don't need to talk about redesigns of stadiums. We don't need to talk about land. What we actually needed after the Europa League final is, all right, well, this is the plan. We're still on course for this. Because that was the idea at the start of the takeover process, it was always meant to be a plan towards a full takeover. And that's gone quiet since they got the foot in the door. So
I think it probably still is the plan. I mean, it's what they tried, right? That was their first bid, was majority control, not total 100% share ownership, 60% majority control. That's what is, and with a staged, tranched takeover after that was the bid. It was turned down for legal reasons and ownership reasons, and they got to the only bid they could get to, in my opinion. And but look at how Ratcliffe has behaved with all of his companies. Like they buy a little bit, they buy a plant off BP or whatever, and then they buy it out totally. And it's always been minority to majority where they haven't owned it outright to start with. So, I think the playbook is there. Of course, the market can dictate different things. It would take right now someone with a bid of over $33 a share, which is nearly double the market cap, to make something happen. So $5 billion plus, or 4.2 is what Ratcliffe bought in, plus the debt gets you to your $5 billion valuation. So, someone would have to bid a very substantial amount of money to make it happen.
And until it happens, we will be left with amateur calculator pushers masquerading as journalists, because now we're stuck in a rolling news cycle where nothing's taken seriously. So, I mean, you can, like you said, there are serious news outlets which you can pay attention to, which you pay attention to, which I pay attention to. But I think everyone just feeds into the noise. Sometimes you want to believe things, and you even disregard the, like, for example, if it was the Saudis buying in, or if it was the Qataris buying in, all the fact that, the Premier League won't ratify it. There's new structures in place, so people. I can't even take that seriously that they would ratify it. I mean, the IHC link. It's the chairman is Sheikh Tahnoon, who is the brother of Sheikh Mansour. Yeah,
like the idea that the Premier League would go, oh yeah, that's arm's length enough.
Yeah, it's just not going to
happen. No chance, right? Yeah. The Saudis the same. I mean, I think the Premier League got burnt already by taking the legally binding assurances at face value. It's obviously a state project. You couldn't have that. I'm sure UEFA, by the way, they have a white paper out at the moment which basically suggests some kind of relaxation of multi-party ownership rules. They still have Article 5 in place, which is about related parties in the same competition. So we've seen changes with Palace and Forest. Aston Villa were forced to change some ownership in one of the Belgian clubs. Obviously, United and Nice had UEFA said you couldn't make transfers between you. Nice had to be put into a blind trust. They were supposed to be like temporary rules while UEFA got its house in order. It's taken them a very long time to do it. Basically, looks like they've looked at the market and gone, yeah, we can't rein this in now. There's more than 200 clubs in Europe who are part of a multi-club ownership group. They're like, the horse has bolted.
Yeah.
There's no point shutting the door. We might as well decide which field you can now play in, which I guess is just reality on the ground.
Yeah.
It's not the way I'd like to have seen the rules designed, but even so, the idea that like UAE, which is a federation, sure, but still, under a single government of multi-party cities, or Saudi, or even Qatar could buy in, with these non-democratic, top-down, or autocratic government structures, like where you just cannot take a massive foreign asset as a private party and go, yeah, I've got nothing to do with the government, mate. I just don't believe it. I've spoken to enough people, both on the pod and off the record, to get understanding of how these countries work and how business is done. I just don't believe it. And I don't believe the Premier League or UEFA would allow it either. That's why I'm kind of dismissive. You can always be surprised. If I'm wrong, but I'd be really surprised.
Yeah, and even if it did, so in this scenario where it did, it would be part of a process that would be played out on the back pages and front pages for weeks, if not months. Yeah, for a very long time. So for people to entertain it as realistic at this point in time, this is why I'm disappointed in the reporters that come out sort of scribbling round after a tweet. Because you're better than that. Like, Ben's better than that. He's got to be. I know, all right. He's seen it as his job to do. And I'm not singling out Ben. It sounds like I am because you mentioned him earlier. So I'm just responding to that. There are other reporters as well, and other people are just saying, "Oh yeah, blah blah," taking it with credibility. But it gives supporters especially all right, you and I are more inclined, or we probably have more of a responsibility, let's say, or we take ourselves as having a responsibility to educate ourselves on the veracity of all of that information. A lot of people don't. They're not bothered. They'll listen to the news and they'll there's got to be some kind of credibility in that because that guy got that right in the summer, or that guy said that, so I'm just going to believe it. And then it applies to amplifying pressure online and stuff like that, which we've seen now, rightly or wrongly, is part of the football environment, and it does play a part. So everyone has a responsibility. I've said it numerous times on this pod and elsewhere. There's got to be an integrity level. There always used to be for football journalists, and now everyone could call themselves one, and I include myself in that, so I'm not blameless or not culpable for the same kind of things. But I would know my own level. You know your own level, and we know.
I'm fucking amazing. I don't know what you're talking about, mate.
I'm talking about the responsibility of the way that we put the information across.
Yeah. I'm not a journalist, and I do think there are different rules around being a journalist with a media outlet, that you have a kind of responsibility because of the platform that you're on to get it right. Actually, I tweeted out last week the rules around materiality that the SEC follows. I mean, I've had a lot of regulatory training over the years. Someone really wanted to challenge that. It was, and he said, you've got a big platform, you've got a responsibility to get it right. Well, one, no, I don't, not really. And two, it wasn't misinformation. Materiality does matter. But you and I are not actual journalists. I mean, at least, I don't know, maybe you're closer than I am. I'm not. I don't write for a publication. The only publication I do any writing in is my own newsletter. I try not to get things wrong. Maybe I do. Most of the time it's commentary, not news breaking, because I don't want to be a journalist. I'm just a podcaster who happens to have worked in pretty high level strategic and investment roles over the years and have some knowledge of how these things work. I don't have inside knowledge of any of these parties.
No, but
I don't pretend to either.
No, what I mean by that, when I was saying that earlier, is that there's news, and some people, they'll listen to the news, but they want the dissemination of the news, and people will come to you as a credible source for that dissemination. So whilst not being a journalist, you filter in the credibility of it for people, and they'll trust you in that regard. So you do have, I'm not giving it to you, but you do have a responsibility in that. You take it seriously, and you're doing through this conversation. We're having this conversation now. What I'm saying is, what the people take it seriously is that they want to get the news story that gets the clicks. There's no credibility to this story until an actual party puts a bid in, and we know that there isn't one. There might be a party putting themselves together, saying, "Oh, we were interested in buying United," but it's nowhere near a credible moment. So there's no need for anyone to take it seriously whatsoever at all. There's nothing in the works. The only thing that people should be considering themselves is, as we were saying last week, is all the noise that came through Ratcliffe's Times interview, all the little soft news that's coming out about the Freightliner line and all that sort of stuff. The only thing you should be paying attention to, don't concern yourself with takeover, because it's nowhere. It's not, well, at least not from
until it happens.
Yeah,
it's not. Yeah, it's not real until it's real. All right, very good. That was fun. Let's talk about some of the other things. Well, I guess we can't put too much time into the women's team. They are about to kick off as we're talking, playing Atletico Madrid in the Champions League. Got a win first time out. Well, good luck to the women's team. There's Vildaboza is on the Atletico side, so she'll be very familiar for a lot of United women fans. It's been a fantastic start to the season. Yeah, long may it continue. I think we'll check in on this result for the weekend pod. Just happens to be recording at the wrong time. Then there were the internationals, and God, man, it's I actually quite like international football because it's low stakes until you get to the tournament, basically, isn't it? You know, the way they've structured qualifying, there's so many teams going to qualify for the World Cup. European qualification seems a bit of a trudge. England have walked it. They were quite good, to be honest. I don't always watch England, but I watched the games against Wales and Latvia. Estonia, but can't remember which. I've gone all Vlad Putin. They're all the same. So England were pretty good, I thought, and no United players in that squad, so it doesn't affect us. There are some pretty serious ones, though, because quite a lot of travel. Casemiro in particular, I'd be looking at, who played the full 180 minutes for Brazil against Japan and Korea.
Yeah,
I kind of understand it. Ancelotti's integrated him back into the squad. He'd been dropped previously under the old manager, and he doesn't have that many games before the World Cup. He's trying to get his team and his squad together. But man, it couldn't be worse timing. I know I've spent a lot of time going to Asia, China, Japan, Korea, India. It's just brutal. The jet lag is brutal because you get there and you're all absolutely fucked up. And then it lasts a week, and however long you stay, you come back, and then that screws you up again.
Yeah.
I can't. He didn't train today, so I almost can't see a scenario in which he plays. Or if he does, he's not going to play more than a half or so. That's a bit of a worry because we've been terrible when Ugarte plays. He played against City, didn't he?
Yeah.
Ugarte, and that was bad. It's bad. Did you watch much of international football?
A little bit. I watched the Latvia game. Tend to not watch a lot of England apart from the tournaments these days. I don't know why, because I felt after COVID and after the Euros, I did feel a little bit more energised about everything. But then I think I got a little bit of a sour taste when Rashford and Sancho missed the penalties, and there's such a revolt, like the disgusting abuse that they got. It sort of turned me off it a little bit because I thought there was a real community coming together, and then so I went off it a little bit. Although it does humour me when the international break comes along, because it's either Manchester United's Marcus Rashford has a stinker or Barcelona's Marcus Rashford is about to sign his deal at Barcelona because he's been so good, and that only seems to come up in international breaks. Can't forget which it is at the moment. I think he's signing for Barcelona at the minute, but United's Rashford could be having a nightmare in the November break. We shall see. I like the first of all, congratulations to Diego Leon because he made his Paraguay debut. Your concerns exactly about Casemiro. First of all, he's only been playing an hour in Premier League games anyway, and then he gets hauled off. Second of all, the Liverpool away is such a big game to be playing. As we've already seen, the benefit of the doubt, you would say, for Amorim, the one thing that he had, when we've been saying he's not got credit in the bank, well, the credit in the bank that he did have was performances in big games away from home. And that's kind of gone now after what happened against City. And part of the reason
last year against Liverpool was pretty good, though.
No, but it was last year against City as well. It was pretty good. So what I'm saying is that it's kind of gone away, and he's got to prove himself again here. And that midfield selection is not even. And I'm not criticising the I know we're going to talk about Liverpool and United if we're going to get onto that anyway, but it's not even the selection itself that's a concern, or the bodies or the approach or anything like that. It's not designed to get the best out of either of those players. It's not designed to do anything to the opposition, really, in terms of what the opposition have got planned. It's designed to do its own thing, and whatever that is in the system, because the players aren't the right fit for either of those roles. Bruno's not the ideal fit for that role, and whoever's going to be playing in there isn't the ideal fit for the other one. He's been quite open on that, Amorim. Maybe not through his words all the time, but obviously so through the redeployment of Bruno in there and the lack of certainty and consistency over the other player. So that's the first concern anyway. The second concern is that you're asking them to do things that they're not familiar with against one of the better teams in the league, who are desperately trying to find a spark to get their form back, so they've got the perfect environment to do that. You are walking into trouble by not being pragmatic. And I'm not the person to say ever be pragmatic unless it's absolutely necessary. And we've seen that we've needed to be. I know that he's really got a fixation on how well we played against Arsenal, but we didn't play as well as what he says we did, and we didn't.
He's become Ten Hag-ish in that,
Yeah, and
he's constantly really talking about a good performance in defeat.
Yeah, and Bruno played all right, but he played all right in the framing of he was more disciplined than you expect, and it didn't contribute to the defeat, which is a different thing from saying we deserve to win because he played well. And if people don't make that distinction, it gives you the idea that we're playing better than what we are or we're more functional in that area. Now, it was completely torn to bits, as you quite rightly said, against City. So the concern that you already have over Casemiro not being ready or Ugarte not being good enough, you've got to change that system. You've got to do something within that midfield to kill the tide of pressure that's going to come. He's not going to do it.
He's not going to do it. There's more chance of me finding £5 billion down the back of my sofa and putting in the bid for Manchester United tomorrow. Ben Jacobs, there's a story for you. No, I'm kidding.
By the way,
it sounds like we're picking on Ben. And
I know.
Really not,
I don't want to.
He's all right. But
I do as well, Ben. If you're listening to this, I think your reporting's been great all summer. It's just this one little thing that I did book. But no, yeah. So the personnel is a problem, and I know he's not going to change the system. So what you're really doing is you're hoping on Casemiro's incisive passing, which he does have from time to time, the timing of his tackling being good for an hour, and Bruno being more disciplined.
Yeah,
like you usually.
That I'm less worried about, the Bruno piece. Yeah. I mean, I actually think he's been pretty good, and like his numbers are great for someone who's playing 30 yards deeper than he should be. Yeah, he's still putting up really high numbers on chance creation and key passes and through balls and all the kinds of things you want. I mean, look, Amorim's system is Amorim's system. Like, if you look at the profile of players that we're supposedly interested in buying in the central midfield area, then like it doesn't change the system; it just changes the personnel, right? We bypass midfield, it going long or going around. And that is the pattern that we've got. And you hope there won't be, quote unquote, spacing behind our midfield for Liverpool to exploit. Of the other internationals that we might be thinking about, Brian Mbeumo played most of Cameroon's 2 games, not all of it. They didn't win. Cape Verde, wonderful story, tiny little country, going to the World Cup. I have to admit, I'm very good on geography. I don't know. Was it Wordle, where you have to guess the country? I have a fantastic record on that. I still had to look up where Cape Verde is exactly. I thought it was off the coast somewhere, and I was like, am I sure? So, but that's a great story. But at Cameroon's expense, they'll have to go through a playoff. Ahmad scored for the Ivory Coast. I don't suppose he'll be starting against Liverpool. I'd be surprised. Bruno didn't play all of Portugal's games. At least he got subbed off, didn't he? In one of them, I can't remember who else actually had some games. It's a surprisingly small number of United players at the moment that are out on the internet. Quite a few of them were back. So Mount, Maguire, Shaw, none of them in the England squad. A little surprised on Mount. I thought Tuchel might be interested in him. but there's like only 2 England games left before the World Cup squad's announced, so that seems unlikely for him to get in there. Who else played? Lenny Yoro played for France under 20s.
Aiden Evan got injured as well.
Leacher won't be ready, but he's been back on the grass training. That's good news.
Yeah, but this points to the inevitability of Luke Shaw playing.
He's definitely going to play. So, yeah. Who else? Cunha played for Brazil. He got an assist in that first game. Yeah. Sesko played twice for Slovakia, didn't score. I think they had a couple of 0-0 draws. So he is the worst transfer in the Premier League, according to one ridiculous... Come on, The Athletic, you're better than that. I remember when I was talking to them about doing their pod. Now and again, just a small story, Wayne. Sorry, it sounds narcissistic, but way back when they asked if me and Paul would like to be the Athletics Manchester United pod. In the end, we turned it down for a few reasons, mainly around kind of ownership of our own creative assets and stuff like that. Occasionally, if I poke fun at the guys at Talk of the Devils, do a great job. I think it's a fantastic team. Really like what they do. Someone will go, "Oh, you're really jealous." I'm like, Jesus fucking Christ, come on. Anyway, why did I get onto that subject?
I've got a story about Talk of the Devils because my website was called Talk of the Devils. And
it was, yeah. They stole. You should sue them, Wayne. It's the New York Times, $2.9 billion in revenue last season.
I actually offered them the domain and the podcast name because obviously, I've got the YouTube channel for it, but I had to change my podcast name to Talking Devils. But I get all the emails that come through to the website or for the Athletic pod, and I'm like, well, you might as well just have the domain. And I contacted them, and they've had no response. It's someone I've talked to previously about, like yourself, working with them on different things. And they just not responded. I'm like, I'm not even being unreasonable. I don't want it. I can do without the hassle. I need to establish my podcast in my own thing. Anyway, that's my little.
Anyway, that was ridiculous. They asked 20 agents who was the worst transfer of the summer, and a whole bunch said Benjamin Sesko. Come on, he wasn't even fit when he arrived. He's had 7 games or whatever it is. He's actually got a decent scoring rate for his number of starting games. I thought he's been getting better with every game.
Yeah.
Expect better of the New York Times, honestly.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
It's a record, Wayne. It's supposed to be a serious publication.
Yeah, I should go back to what I was saying earlier about the, reputable journalists and everything. And then, to be fair, the Athletic for years were that, and maybe they've taken a bit of a slide. But you should notice that the article wasn't from anyone from Talk of the Devils, and I'm sure...
No, it was not.
So they should have probably something to say about it. I did find it funny because there was an article a couple of weeks ago, and I don't know if it was from their Liverpool writer, but it was a big defence on how he shouldn't write players off after this stupid 007 thing that's been doing the trends on socials. He shouldn't write off Flurry and Wirtz, and there's all this stuff about players' mental health, and, I completely agree with that. I thought, do you know what? It's good article, good points being made, and just finally something serious to be said about the ridiculousness of writing players off too early. And they piggyback it with this, which is just a complete nonsense. Because who cares? Who cares what agents think? Like the Partridge shrugging me. No, well, so what?
And what agents as well? Because there's 10,000 registered FIFA agents.
Yeah,
they picked 20.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah,
thanks.
So what?
Thanks for your information.
If you ran a poll on Twitter and 20 people responded, you're like, right, here's a scientific piece. Well, anyway. Absolute nonsense. It'll be interesting. Like, Matheus Cunha had an injury, came back too early, I reckon. Don't you think? He just didn't seem quite fit. Does he start? He played. He's obviously been on the same trip. Younger, seems less affected by the physicality stuff. I mean, it's Liverpool in the same boat, right? A lot of their players played international games and will have taken long trips. I've spent less time looking at their players, so everyone's in the same boat. But it's a difficult one where they play 2, and then especially with the either South American or Asian teams, they basically end up coming back a day late, so they miss a day's worth of training. They have less time than everyone else, and that has in the past impacted on Amorim's decision making on his team selection.
And this for me would be the perfect opportunity to switch Bruno back into 10 and pack the midfielder, or not change the system overtly, but do it discreetly enough that you set up in the same way, but just ask Bruno to sit deeper and pack the midfield in the same kind of way. Because if Ahmad's not going to start, and I probably agree with you, and Cunha's not going to start because he's knackered, he probably will start one of them alongside Mbeumo.
Well, he'll start Mount. Mbeumo, Mount, and Sesko will be his three, I imagine. But,
maybe, but what I'm saying is the opportunity there. You've got the opportunity to actually move that around and pack your midfield without losing any face, really. You can say, oh, Bruno, sit deeper, and then when they analyse it afterwards and they say, oh, did you ask him to do it? He said, no, because he's disciplined and he's a team player, that's what he did. Do you know what I mean? The team needed help. It's a very, very easy question to dodge. And the issue that you have with that, or the issue that I have with that, is only that I would expect to see something like that if his job was actually at risk. And I don't think it is. I think he's probably been, and it shouldn't be yet. He's got the questions to ask, but I think he feels confident enough to keep going the way that he's going. So I do think it's still going to be that sort of porous midfield. And, like we've said, that combination that you just said in attack, it probably will be that.
I don't think he'll change the system at all. Maybe the personnel will shift around a little bit. I suspect we will do what we've done, what Amorim does in these big games where he's worried about it, is that he'll go a bit more defensive. So I thoroughly expect Diogo Dalot to be one of the wing-back positions. Is Mazraoui fit? Not sure he is, actually. He might be tempted to play both of them. Yeah. And if not, I wouldn't have been surprised with that at all. So if he's not fit, Mazraoui, then Dorgu will play the other side. It's basically a back five. And we'll go quite direct. I mean, most direct side in the Premier League this season. The thing about that is you really need to be careful what direct it is. If it's long passes into the channels to stretch to the game, that's one thing that could actually be quite effective because, as we know, Frimpong and Kerkez really do like to push up field.
Yeah.
They've had a mixed start to the season, I'd say those two, but they do leave gaps. Yeah. And we know that the way that Slot has adjusted the tactics this season, they leave more space behind their midfield than they have done in the past. It looks a bit like Ten Hag ball with better players. We know that's their weakness. It's also United's weakness.
Yeah,
midfield area. What won't work, which is what we did for the first half against Arsenal, which we played quite well, but a lot of the attacking stuff was ineffective, is straight long balls. Whatever you say about Virgil van Dijk's regression, and he has regressed, at least where the ball's moving around on the ground quickly, him and Konate, league leaders in aerial duels, right? Just because Sesko's 9'7" doesn't mean that launching it at him is going to be an effective ploy. Now, this is the time when Sene Lamans launches it long for Sesko's flick on and we score the winner. Love it if it happens, but it doesn't seem to be the right strategy.
The smart strategy is pushing Sesko on Konate or Gomez and leaving Van Dijk to deal with Mbeumo or Ahmad, whoever's going to be playing on that side. Because that's the only way. Because Van Dijk will eat him up for breakfast, of course he will. Even if he's growing in confidence and doing well, that's the kind of duel where he excels, and Sesko's not going to run at him. So, and he wouldn't be advised to. He's not a natural dribbler. He's not a slouch on the ball, but he's just
he's pretty quick. But it's off the ball movement that's quick.
You would want him on the other side and causing the damage there. In the same way that for a couple of years we did that way. We put Rashford on Van Dijk, and he had a lot of joy. He scored a few goals against Liverpool in a short period of time. I'm with you on the strategy. The thing that always worries me with United, and it's been their strength and their drawback in many, many years, is the tendency of the individuals and their qualities to play the biggest role in any game. They undermine the strategy. You would never look at an individual at United over the last 10 years and say the individual quality, or rarely, you could probably pick up one or two examples, now I'm saying this, but very rarely would you say a player's individual qualities. Ahmad's a great example of the contrary point I'm making here, that you would say that player's good for that system because his qualities fitted to that system. So he's been really good at the wing back and the right forward position. He brings the best out of him. But other players, their individual qualities seem to undermine whatever system we try and set up. And the reason I'm mentioning all this is because Luke Shaw, for many years, had an Indian sign over Mo Salah. People will not remember this because it's so far back in the memory archive as to be dug out by people like Wayne Barton, rendered meaningless in the capacity of football knowledge. He was very good for 2 or 3 years against Salah. Salah had a reputation for never scoring against United, and then that changed and he scored lots and had Shaw on toast. This is the worst position for Luke Shaw to play against Salah. It's the best position for Salah to get some of his confidence going. He's proven it time and again. I think he's probably had a game against Shaw in this position as well and done very well against him.
Mm.
So that's very concerning for me because Shaw will switch off and Salah won't switch off. And Salah will be tenacious.
Well, yeah, Shaw only has to switch off once.
Yeah.
And yeah. I think I'm right in saying that Shaw does have a victory at Anfield, though. It was just for Southampton. United haven't won at Anfield in, I think this will be the 10th visit.
Hang on,
since our last win. You said you got some stats.
I have
Go
got
on.
the stats. I'll come to Luke Shaw in a minute because I'm not sure if he played in the last one. But do you know when our first clean sheet was at Anfield in the Premier League?
I don't know, 1992 at some point.
Exactly. You would think it was that early, but it wasn't. It was actually 2004 when Rooney scored. 2005 actually. It was the start of 2005 when Rooney scored at the Cup. Then we had 4 consecutive clean sheets, and then it's not been very good ever since then. There's been the odd one, but they've been very sparing. I'm just going to check in the archive here to see if Luke Shaw played in that 15-16 game. No, he didn't. I can tell you who played at left back. Matteo Darmian was there the last time we won at Anfield, and in the Juan Mata game, who played at left back. Let's see. Daley Blind played at left back. So no Luke Shaw in either of our victories. Marcus Rocco, honourable mention for him as well. So
I don't know if there's anything honourable about Marcus Rocco. It's certainly not how he treats toast. Anyway.
Yes.
Well, look, we'll be playing in white, apparently, not the black kit. The white kit, Juan Mata, Wanfield, white kit, John O'Shea scoring at the Cop, white kit. I think Rio Ferdinand scored a header, white kit.
No, not Ferdinand. But I know.
Oh, no, Ferdinand was Old Trafford, sorry. Yeah.
What was a 7-0?
I don't block that one.
I don't know if it was white. That might have been white. I think it was. Yeah, well, it was.
Let's talk about Liverpool a little bit because they have been a bit vulnerable. The tactical changes, I think, they won their first 5 games in a row, but they didn't play very well in any of them. They got all these last-minute victories. They kind of got turned around against Palace, didn't it, when Palace scored twice late to lose. They've looked vulnerable. Jamie Carragher was bleating on about it, bleating, his dolphin-like high-pitched voice, permanently on helium and talking nonsense most of the time, going on about Liverpool not being very good. It's kind of come true last 3 games. The vulnerabilities have been shown. Ryan Gravenberch, everyone was like, he's reinvented the defensive midfield position. It's not been that good this season. He's also injured. He might not play at all.
Yes.
So, yeah, I mean, they are vulnerable. In theory, at least.
Yeah. No, they are. And everything within my disposition would say, don't be silly, Wayne. But, you look at the fact. So I look at it from the other perspective of like trends and stuff outside of the actual arena of the football match itself. But the trend is United haven't won back-to-back games under Amorim in the league. So this would be a nice time to start and get that going. And wouldn't it be just like football to be like that? But then I look at the realistic nature of the way that this is, the way that United are going to set up, the vulnerabilities that United have. Can you remember Mourinho's first game at Anfield where Liverpool were vulnerable, they were in a patchy run of form, and everyone was like, United were doing so well, though. They were playing quite well under Mourinho. It's like, well, they can go there and they can properly take them apart and have a comprehensive victory and be a really good tone setter. And Mourinho went and did what Mourinho does, and he was very unapologetic about it. It's like, no, we'll just get a 0-0 and we'll get through it. And we did. And Klopp came out and he was like, I think it was Klopp who was manager at the time, and he's going, oh, yeah, United playing long ball, blah, 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 blah. And at the time, I was quite defensive of it, I can remember, because, it's your team and, you've got the result and blah, blah, blah. But then I fast forward to this time, and I think when you look at the way that the teams are, United are probably, like I said this earlier, and I know that they're not going to do it, and I know you don't need to repeat to me about the system's a system, it's not going to change. But I think that brings Liverpool more confidence, and that might just be the natural pessimist in me at this point, where even though I like to think I'm an optimist, the pessimist in me goes, they will see this game as a perfect opportunity to build confidence. The atmosphere will be there without question. They are also, as well as United, the most emotionally driven team in the country, for good and for bad reasons. For bad reasons, for anyone wanting Liverpool history when Kenny Dalglish resigned because he had too much pressure over Hillsborough. For good reasons, the way that Hillsborough has inspired them over certain generations to do bigger and better things, and the way that they've got a comeback spirit that's equal to our own in certain games and certain moments in their own history. And so when you look at everything that they've done this season, and it's impossible to separate it from Diogo Jota. So a lot of what they were doing earlier in the season, I attributed to that. I thought, and I couldn't tell if that's a negative or a positive thing, because you can look at it from both sides. You can say, well, this is a team who are really struggling with the loss of a really big figurehead, maybe not in the squad, but really popular player. And if you lose someone like that, it's going to have a devastating mental impact. And it has done, you can see that. So maybe that's had an impact on the performances, but then you could also say it's had a positive impact on the togetherness and the way that it's brought out that thing in Liverpool that is the worst thing you want to bring out in Liverpool as a competitor, because they're very good at it. They're very good at it in the same way that we are. In the Ferguson era, you would say United were always nailed on for a last-minute goal and you would never rule them out. They've got exactly the same kind of thing. You do not want them to have it. As a United fan, you don't want them to have it, but they've got it, and fair play to them for that. So the person in me, the United fan who detests Liverpool, goes, now do you know that? All right, maybe this is a vulnerable time to play them. But the person in me who appreciates that they're still a great club, and appreciates that they've had a significant loss, and appreciates that they've done well. Up until recently, they've done well in terms of scoring all those late winners. You could cite that as togetherness. But I look at that as a bad omen for United, because I think that United are not in the positive. They're not in a state of mentality, and these games are very often determined by mentalities. We saw in the 7-0 a very good example of that. The United are not in that frame of mind to go to Anfield and beat them in the frame of mind that Liverpool will be in. And I think that's a key area, which we will talk about the system, and we have done already, but I think that that's probably where this game's going to be won and lost.
Yeah, well, thanks for killing my buzz there, Wayne. Yeah. I was just about to say United 5-0 win, your twin, the Liverpool fan and the YouTuber, the bald chap. We'll be on there calling for Slot's head.
Can I just say something here? What I shouldn't say, there's a Liverpool fan channel, while we're talking about them. There's one that's just put something out today, and it's doing the rounds. A young lad had cancer, and he had a wish to. He was, I think, 16-year-old, and he had a wish to go and see all the murals in Liverpool that are painted on the buildings. And some people from Liverpool took, I think maybe even Carragher took him round, and they had messages from all the people. Like there was a mural of Fowler, one of Henderson, one of Klopp, and they got all these video messages from all these people to wish him well and everything. And it's a superb piece of content. And the reason why I mentioned that, we talk about takeovers, to take it right to the back of the top of this. Recently this week, it was the 10th or 15th anniversary of FSG taking over Anfield, and it took them 5 or 6 years to get it right. And even then, in this 15 years period, they've still only won the league twice, and it's cited as great ownership and everything like that. Gives you an example of how long it is to be seen as a success. Yeah. And what constitutes success, because I don't think if United, through Ratcliffe, win 2 titles in 15 years, they'll be seen as successful.
Oh,
really
definitely not. No. And and even now after 13 years of failure post Ferguson, I'm not sure that would be seen as a success. What FSG did do, I mean, they had a club in the toilet. Hicks and Gillette were going bust. They were in serious trouble as an organisation. They'd made 2 decades worth of bad decisions, bought all the wrong players, were miles behind United financially, had fallen behind United in terms of number of league titles. So there's a kind of allegory there for United in terms of turning it around. For the plug, write my Substack this week on Liverpool's data revolution, what that might tell United, because this is something Ratcliffe has called out more than once now as where United are. He said we were dinosaurs. Still don't have a head of the data department. Strictly speaking, haven't appointed a new person there. Will need to, and will be making those investments, I'm sure. But that's one of the reasons why they are good ownership, because for a period of time they had an almost totally immaculate record in the transfer market and just couldn't go wrong. We managed to sell Coutinho for 130 million and invested it perfectly, and all the players they invested it in were excellent. Van Dijk, Mane, Alisson, Salah was prior to Coutinho or after him? Don't remember now.
It can't be from the Coutinho money. I don't know how far that went because they were still joking about it this summer, but
well, that's right. And they spent, there's question marks over some of their players this summer. They spent a hell of a lot of money. They've bought good players. I mean, Florian Wirtz, I'd have been delighted with him at United. He's had a slow start to the season. He's come from the Bundesliga, which is a less physical league. I think it's generally accepted now that transfers from the French league are easier to integrate. Yeah. Might not be the highest quality league, but easier to integrate because it's a physical league. The Bundesliga is a bit slower. There is a learning curve, but I think he's an excellent player. It's a TK, interesting. He started the season, scored a few goals, kind of lost his place to Isak. Yeah. Isak, of course, who's part of a Sweden side that have been completely and totally humiliated in World Cup qualification. Just terrible. Yeah. Two of the most expensive strikers on the planet. Yeah. Can't score a fucking goal. Let's hope it's the same. Gyökeres, yeah. It's a terrible start to the season at Arsenal. Yeah. But they've got a hell of a lot of good players. The system is a question mark for sure. There are vulnerabilities, but yeah, I would imagine that Slot is very keenly looking at this to fix those vulnerabilities.
Hey, look, like you're saying, the general theory is the greater Slot's influence, the worse that they get, and I'm all for that. I just think Liverpool as a club at this moment in time, this is the perfect game for. You could argue it's the perfect game for us as well, because we're due that turning point, and who better for it to come against, considering we need it.
I don't want to be talking on Monday about is this Amorim's time's up. I want a famous victory where he runs to the cop end and knee slides, kissing the badge. Before works. Gary Neville runs onto the pitch with him. Just to wind up the Scousers. Yeah. Well, this is the one game where Anfield actually does sing. Normally you get the song at the beginning and they raise all the scarves and then they go silent for the next 89 minutes. They will presumably make a bit of noise.
Yes.
So, not too much, hey. I'm sick of losing at Anfield. And just not even losing, getting absolutely spanked sometimes. So
yeah. We don't do that, do we, to teams? That's the thing. Like Arsenal got it once, the 8-2 and the 6-1, but that was many years before that.
Oh, under Ollie, didn't we have like 10 5-0s or something under Ollie? It was as good as it got post Ferguson. Ollie was.
No,
it's not revisionism. It's actually true.
No, yeah, I'm talking about in the big games against vulnerable big opponents. We don't dish out the batterings when they're vulnerable. I think the best we've had over Liverpool that I can remember in my memory is 4-0 in 2003 when they had, I think Ipia got sent off after a couple of minutes. Yeah. But even then, even at our best, like I was saying earlier, in those early 10, 15 years in the Premier League, very few clean sheets, even when we had decent results there. and never big wins as well. So United haven't. I remember once the one Mata game, wasn't it? 'Cause one Mata scored twice, and Gerrard was sent off, and I was thinking, come on, get a 4 or 5 here. And this was just after they'd beaten us 3-0 at Old Trafford and had like 17 penalties, if you remember that game, which was just bloody ridiculous. I remember it well because it was one of my best mates' birthday, and we all went corporate for his birthday. He took us there, and it was his actual birthday. It wasn't like a day around his birthday. It was his birthday. Shout out Dan if you're listening or watching. And Liverpool won 3-0, and they had all those penalties, and they kept missing them. They missed 2 penalties of the like 3 or 4 that they got. It was 3 or 4 penalties that they got, right?
I don't think it was 4. I don't remember.
Well, it was definitely at least 3, and they missed at least 1. I don't know. It's a long time ago. It was the David Moyes one where everyone was defiantly supporting Moyes at the end of that. So what I'm trying to say is, like, we've had a fair share of whoopings from teams who've seen us vulnerable. It's happened many times, not just Liverpool, and it's not going to happen in this game. It won't happen in this game. But it'd be nice if in the future, when we are back on the top of our perch, that we start dishing out a few in retribution, because I know we lived a life of glory, and like we could say that that's penance for that. But I think we've got a younger generation who needs to see some of that being handed out as well.
Yeah.
Instead of suffering like we might do again on Sunday.
All right, Liverpool 0, United 8 on Sunday is Wayne's prediction. We'll leave it there. Thank you very much, everyone. Wayne, you can catch Wayne on... what is the name of your pod now? Talking Devils. Talking Devils.
Yeah, you said that with such a condescension, but yes, it's Talking Devils.
No, not condescension. I'm just making sure I get it right. Talking Devils for Wayne, and he's got various books on sale at the moment. Paul Parker book just came out. How's it selling?
Paperback of George Best.
Paperback version of True Genius. Very good.
I'm glad that you asked me this, because I got this ready. And this just arrived today, Paul Parker.
He's got them all ready for the play. What a pro.
Paul is doing a lot of media at the minute. So he's doing Sky Sports tomorrow. So it'd be worth watching for once. And doing some United media next week. And then when he's done his media so far...
Is he doing his interview with Cave?
He dislikes Cave as much as I do. I shouldn't say that. He's going on Sky. He loves all the guys at Sky. So be sure to tune in. People have been... It's funny because when I shared about it today, about the book coming, someone tweeted, another Dan. It was a nice guy, actually, but he has a bit back and forth with me on Twitter sometimes about my opinions that he doesn't always like. He said something about tackling the game more like tackling his old club, because he's always criticising United. I haven't found that to be the case with Paul. I've done a podcast with him for 8 years, and he's always been self-effacing, self-critical, and he's critical by nature, but also they're the standards which he lived by and played by, and United haven't met those standards. So if you actually listen to him, as I do every week, I think he actually makes a lot of good points. And in the book, he's very self-effacing. There's a lot of very, very interesting stuff on the class of 92 about the way that he was when they were coming through. And not a lot of it, a lot of it's good, but not all of it is positive about the way that he was. And I think I would say this, obviously, because I worked on it, but I think a professional would do a good job for reading a book like that and taking accountability for their actions and the way that their actions influence the pattern of their own career. Because Paul had a great career, but the way that he's critical or observant of his own behaviours is very, very telling. And maybe that's something that comes with age and experience, because he's lived in different places as well. Like yourself, you will know when you live in different countries, you have a very different awareness of society and people's behaviours. So
I'm very aware of how society's behaving over here at the moment.
Yeah.
Fucking terrifying.
But yeah, anyway, it's a good read for that. Although I would say that because I worked on it. It was a privilege because Paul, I'm sure, like yourself, that 94 team was my favourite growing up. So to work with a hero like that has just been a complete privilege. It's been great. Very
good. All right. On that note, everyone hit the subscribe button if you're not on your podcast app of choice, or especially on YouTube. It's very useful. So I don't have to go finding a new audience every week, which is the game on YouTube, apparently. We'll catch you all after the Liverpool game. Thanks a lot. Bye now.